In terms of the cycle and the last downturn, I think in many ways, you know, the property cycle is about as inevitable as death and taxes. So I think we'll probably see, when the downturn does come, a lot of pain, and the same sort of players taking that pain. Talking to a banker the other day, you know, they said they make great, you know, profit for 12 years, and then they lose it all in 2 years. And I can't see that being any different this cycle. Their margins are wafer thin, and then they'll have to take a big hit when the market downturns. So, yeah, history repeats itself. I don't think people have learnt the lessons. They have in some areas. We're not seeing the sort of crazy deals we saw at the top end of the last cycle. That sort of froth isn't there necessarily. But, you know, we've got other risks to manage, and we're in new territory in this cycle for many reasons. It's a much more risky world. We've just got to keep, you know, doing what we do on a day-to-day basis and keep trying to steer the ship as best we can.
Okay. I guess, I think you said real estate sort of risk management strategy. I guess what we're really focusing on is not just the strategy. I think we have a strategy in terms of risk management. It's the process that comes with it, which is probably more important. How do you enforce that process? Going back to the questions, are we asking the right questions? I think the biggest risk is when you don't ask your decision makers the right questions, or they don't ask themselves the right questions. That I think helps a lot in terms of focusing where, which risks you'd like to take, which risks you can manage, and which risks you should avoid. Going back to your initial question about, have we learned the lessons? I think putting location at the forefront is even more important today. It's no location times 3, it's, power 3 or power 10. I think location is ever more important for a number of reasons we touched upon briefly today. And I think the other key thing is liquidity. I think we have learned a lesson about liquidity, but you mentioned and you referenced the previous cycle. I think we should also pay attention to the way the cycle before that, in terms of the way it behaved, is probably more important. Supply side.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see clients very focused on risk at the moment in terms of how they evaluate transactions and running different scenarios of what would happen in particular situations and how you would enforce a particular loan or what the underlying issues are. And I think risk is reflected, the importance of risk is reflected in a lot of the latest regulations. For example, the AFMD, the Alternative Investment Fund Managers Directive requires fund managers to have what they call a hierarchically separate risk division, if you like, which is separate from the investment decision, so that it reviews independently the risk components of the underlying transaction. We see a lot of people trying to, on transactions, limit the risk, contractual risk, as much as possible. There's a significant increased use of insurance at the moment on warranties, indemnities, etc. We find clients have very different views as to how long this cycle will be, and some think it will. The fact that we've had 3 years of significant growth doesn't necessarily mean that the cycle isn't going to go on, because we're in a very unusual situation. But clearly it will end at some time, and people necessarily have short memories. I mean, the only thing I think is almost certain is it won't be driven by the same factors as the last cycle. It will probably be triggered by other things, and therefore to extrapolate and say, well, are we in 2005, 2006, isn't necessarily always the exact way of analysing it.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to everybody.